Welcome to Overwatch Database and our Stage 2 Week 1 Power Rankings. I'm here with Connor today. We'll jump into it in just a second. I just wanted to kind of explain why we had kind of a lack of content recently. I ended up going on vacation for a week and a half, and we did not have time to put out anything letting people know about that beforehand. So we're back now, though. We'll be doing regular content videos every week again as we were before. So we're going to jump right into the power rankings here. This is after the most recent week of the first week of Stage 2. And it saw some very interesting results. I think that it was definitely the most upsets we've seen in a single week this year. So it really shook things up a lot. Starting with the bottom five, number 20, we have the LA Valiant 0-4 record. They have not won a game yet. I know there is technically a team with a worse record than them, but I think just the way they've lost, I think the Valiant still got to be kind of the quote-unquote worst team in the league. But right behind them at number 19, the London Spitfire. Again, they're 0-6, so you can make an argument that they should be last, but I think that after this week, the Valiant will be 0-6 too. And London's been taking maps. They did take a map off Florida, and kind of made that series not super close, but they did make Florida work for it a little bit. Number 18, we have the Vancouver Titans, also 0-4. They've actually taken a map in every single game they've played. But we have them this low just because of, the previous stage results, and I don't really see that changing this week with games against the Gladiators and the Atlanta Reign. Number 17, we have the Guangzhou Charge. They're 2-4, and they've been one of the many teams that were kind of poor last season that have looked a little bit better this stage, but I think they've still kind of been the weaker of the bad teams that have looked better in week one of stage 2, the June Joust. So I think that while things are looking up for them, we can't really put them up too much higher yet and kind of overreact because they did only win one game of their 2 this weekend. And it was against New York, so it's not like they really beat, even though New York has looked better, it wasn't like they beat a super elite team. And then at number 16, we have the NYXL. Again, looked a little bit better this week. When they beat the Philadelphia Fusion, I actually really thought they would beat Guangzhou too. And if they did, I would have boosted them way up the rankings, but that loss kind of reminded us they're still not super good, but it was impressive beating Philly, even though I think Philly's really, really poor in this meta and one of the worst APAC teams in this meta we have going on for the June Joust. I still think that it's just not enough to move them up more than that. So getting into the next five, 15 Paris Eternal. You could make an argument. It doesn't really matter. You could flip-flop them in New York. They're both 2-4. Kind of look kind of equal in my opinion. The thing that kind of put Paris over the edge to put them in 15th was their win against the Justice and the fact that they 3-0'd them. And even though the Justice have looked poor in the June Joust so far, I think that was really impressive. Number 14, we have the Toronto Defiant. And I know that's probably kind of a controversial take, having them at 14, being they are 4-2. But, when you look at the Defiant, they've had an immensely easy schedule, and I think that has really been a lot of what's kind of fueled their wins. And I think the 4-2 is good. I think that's great for them. I think that's great for them and all moving forward. But I just think that the competition they've played has been so weak compared to a lot of other teams. And I was really high on Toronto. I thought Toronto was going to be a lot of, better than people thought coming into the season, and I had really high hopes. And I still do, but they haven't looked that great, even beating these bad teams. I mean, their first game, they played Vancouver. Their second game, they did beat Atlanta, but that was a reverse sweep. So they still, barely pulled that out. And then, like the one good team they did play, the Justice, they got 3-0'd. Granted, the Justice looked pretty decent last stage. And they also got 3-0'd by Florida. And so every time they've played a really good team, they've gotten just mopped over. And, so they've only beat the bad teams. Number 13, we have the Atlanta Reign, sitting at 3-3. They've looked a little better in this meta than I thought. I think the Kai and Pelican have looked really, really good playing DPS in this meta. And I still don't think they're a very good team, really. I think they're going to succeed in this meta, and I think as soon as the hero bans go away for the third tournament, the Summer Showdown, I think they'll go back to being like a 1-3, 2-2, per stage type of team. So I think it is kind of a fluke. Number 12, the LA Gladiators. It was really tough to rank them because they're 2-2, and we haven't seen them play this stage yet. It was really kind of tough to put them, to decide where to put them. So we just kind of threw number 12. It's not really, They could come out next week and win both their games and shoot up the rankings, or they could lose and not be good in this meta. Like, we just don't know. So that's why they are where they are. There will probably be a lot of fluctuation with them depending on the results next week. And number 11, we have the Boston Uprising, also 3-3. I put them all the way up to 11th because, man, have they been so impressive in what they've done this week. I'm 37, and Valentine have been fantastic on DPS. And I really like the debut of Gabe Bolsey on tank for them. I thought he played really, really well. And I think they have a lot of really good stuff going for them. And the reason I put them this high versus the other like bad teams from the first stage that have been doing better is because, first of all, the manner of their wins. They 3-0'd Toronto, they 3-0'd Washington. But not only that, I think this team actually has a lot of potential to be good in other stages too. I don't think Atlanta Reign will be very good in the Summer Showdown. I don't think Paris will look this improved in the Summer Showdown. I think a lot of these teams are only benefiting from this meta, but I feel like Boston is one of the teams that could be really good even out of this meta and look way improved over the first stage.
Yeah, and following up on that, with these hero bans that are being put in place with the current meta that's being used by the league, you really don't know how teams are actually going to perform because it could throw some teams completely off, but some teams could come in, and some teams that we considered bad or lower on our power rankings last month, they can come up. So there's going to be a lot of changes going on here, and it's going to be really interesting to see how that turns out.
Yeah, no, these power rankings are going to fluctuate like crazy. And you are right about the bad teams kind of like from the last stage looking better because of the hero bans. Like, I really look at Paris as an example. I didn't think Naga was that great on DPS in the first stage, but he's looked so much better here in the June Joust because he's playing Echo and he's really good at it, and that's really helped some of these teams. So getting into the top 10, at number 10 we have the Seoul Dynasty with a 3-1 record. I almost put Boston over them. I thought maybe that was like too much of a spicy take yet. But yeah, Seoul Temp, they just haven't been that. They weren't that impressive in the May Melee, even though they went 3-1. I just really didn't think they were that impressive, and I don't know what they're gonna look like in this meta. I think Prophet and Birdring will succeed probably on the heroes they can play. So I don't think it'll be a bad meta for them, but I don't think it makes them any better either. So I think they're still going to be the same old kind of semi-inconsistent team. So that's why they're at 10th, because this team really should be better. They should be an elite team, in my opinion, but I think they're going to continue to just be middle of the pack, and I don't think they are going to be able to just flip that switch.
And going along with what you were saying for the Dynasty, I mean, you have Marvel who plays main tank, and of course he can play Sigma, but with the Rhine ban in, it's hard to say how that's going to affect him as a main tank player. I mean, having a bigger pool of main tanks, even though there's only, 3? There's Orisa, Sigma, Rhine. I mean, you only have 3 there, and he mainly only plays Sigma and Rhine for main tank. He does play Orisa, not that often, but if he's doing, I guess you could say, bad on Sigma and wanted to make a switch to Rhine, well, you can at this point, so that's going to be a damper onto that team. So that's something that we got to think about for all of these teams, like especially with the Tracer game too, and like you have Fuel, who has a great Tracer player, but now you can't have him playing Tracer, so what are you going to do?
I think Soul will be all right because I think Marvel, like you said, he can play Orisa. I think Gesture has played Orisa in the past. I think their tank line will be fine, but I just think the team's going to be just the same as they were in the fact that they're good but inconsistent.
Yeah. Gesture does play main tank, mainly off tank, Winston and Hog, but there's main tank on there.
Yeah, so I think the tank line will be fine. So number 9, the Hangzhou Spark with a 3-3 record. I know it's kind of high to put them number 9, but again, it's just a team like Boston that's looked so good in this meta, and I don't really think it's a fluke either. I think along with Boston, so they beat the Guangzhou Charge. Let's talk about that first. They beat the Guangzhou Charge 3-1, and that was impressive, but that didn't move the needle for me. But 3-0ing Shanghai, that was probably the most what the hell result over the weekend. 3-0ing Shanghai, that blew my mind when I woke up to that. I didn't actually get to go back and watch the VOD, but I heard Shy popped off on Ash and did his thing, and so that's why they are number 9, even with the 3-3 record, because they're trending up so fast. And I think that with the putting Shy in the roster, I think they can also succeed in the future in the Summer Showdown, not just in the June Joust. So number 8, we have the Washington Justice. They have a 4-2 record. I really wanted to drop them lower They looked so bad. I mean, they got 3-0'd by who was it again? It was Paris, and let me find the other team.
You're talking about Washington, right?
Yeah.
It was Boston.
Oh, Boston.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it wasn't even like they got 3-0'd by perceived good teams. I mean, Boston and Paris. So like that was really surprising. So they have a lot of answers. They have a lot of questions that they need to come up with answers for. Because as bad as they looked, do they win do they even win a game this stage? I mean, we could talk about the Washington Justice, I really believe, as like a 4-4 team at the end of June Joust. Looking at their upcoming schedule, they play the Florida Mayhem and the San Francisco Shock. Those are not gimmies. They could very well be 4-4 if they don't figure out. And we'll talk about this more in our weekly recap. But I mean, why haven't they been playing Decay? Like, what's going on there? So we'll just have to kind of keep following that team because that's a team that should be really, really good, but they seem really volatile right now.
Yeah, I think throughout the stage we're going to see a lot of player rotations because of the bands that are in and maybe getting some more players in there that may not have played much last stage. So we're going to have to do a lot of changes on these rankings and see how the teams play. And it's going to be completely different than last stage. I got to say, like, with different players coming in, other ones going out. And even you have teams that, like the Outlaws, where you have a support playing DPS. I mean, how often do you see a change like that? I mean, given he does play both, but still,
Yeah, there's going to be more fluctuation in the rankings this stage than the previous one, just because of the hero ban and all the I mean, at one point, over the weekend, we saw like 5 upsets in a row. Upsets if you're going by what their records were. So, number 7, the Philadelphia Fusion. And then number 6, the Chengdu Hunters. Both these teams are 4-2. I'm just kind of talking about them both at the same time because it was kind of just a toss-up where you wanted to put these two. I feel like they're pretty even. I ended up putting Chengdu 6th because of the fact that they did beat Philly over the weekend. So that's why they are 6th and Philly is 7th. The Fusion, though, have been immensely disappointing this stage. I didn't really anticipate such a drop-off from the May Melee to the June Joust. So that was kind of surprising. I think the reason I didn't put them down more is because you got to factor in, that they don't have half their roster, and the fact that I think they'll be good. I think they'll be good in the Summer Showdown in Stage 3 once it goes back to regular, the comps that we were seeing last stage again. So I don't want to drop them too far because I think that they will be good again. And then Chengdu at 6.
I mean, with Fusion, sure, you're going to get rid of the hero bands next stage, but are they going to have those players back by that point, or are they just going to be completely out for the rest of the season? We've had like no updates on this except for we're working on it basically. And is it going to even happen? I don't know.
Well, I still think they'll be okay though, but because when they didn't have the hero bands, they still managed to go 4-0 even with the roster they have now. So
True,
I think they'll still be all right. Yeah. So getting into the top 5, number 5, the San Francisco Shock, 3-1 record. It was kind of tough to place them. One, we have, they didn't play this week, so we have not seen them play in this meta in the June Joust with the current hero bands of Reinhardt, Sombra, Tracer, and who's the support? Zenyatta. So we have not seen them. I think it is going to affect them because, they will be able to play Violet on Zen. Obviously, Super won't probably play at all because Reinhardt's banned. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see what they do. And, all this stuff putting Violet on DPS. And there's a lot of questions to answer for them. But I still wanted to put them 5th because it's still the Shock. They still only technically dropped 1 regular season game. So I think you still can't overreact. But it is getting very close to the point where if things don't improve for them, you certainly can very soon start overreacting for this team. Number 4, the Florida Mayhem, 4-2 record. I know probably in some people's eyes maybe that's a little high. I just really like this team. I mean, Yaki just gigapounds. He's so good. The whole roster is really good. OG has been surprisingly okay, but I think that's all he's been is okay. Everybody's talking about he's having this huge resurgence, on Florida. I don't really feel like that. I feel like he's just been serviceable. I don't think he's been nearly elite or anything, but he has been good enough. They had a nice win over the London Spitfire. And I don't really think losing to Houston was a bad loss. And we're still talking about the team that got 3rd in Hawaii. So even though their record's 4-2, I think it's kind of deceiving. I think they're very, very good and definitely a top 5 team. Number 3, the Houston Outlaws, 5-1 record. They're the only team in the league with 5 wins, actually. And I was a little bit worried about them, I'm not going to lie, when they lost to the Atlanta Reign. But I also didn't really anticipate Atlanta being this strong. in the June Joust. And they had a really nice bounce back win against Florida, who I really rate really highly. So that's why Houston is third and Florida's fourth. And again, they only have the one regular season loss. You could make an argument, well, they were really good in the May Melee, but they didn't get to Hawaii. Well, they ran into the Dallas Fuel. I think if they didn't play Dallas in that part of the bracket, I think they probably get to Hawaii and have a chance to win. I really do think that. So that's why they're number 3. Number 2, the Shanghai Dragons, a 4-2 record, but again, number 2, they came in second in the May Melee in stage 1, and they pushed the Fuel. I mean, I think the Fuel won 4-2, but it was pretty competitive, and I think that they've been the team that's played the Fuel the toughest during that whole run. And I don't think you can overreact. I think that losing to the Spark 3-0, I know that looks really bad. I think that's just more impressive for the Spark than anything. So I don't think you can really overreact to that. They still had a nice 3-0 win over Chengdu. And then to round out the rankings, at number 1, with a 2-2 record, the Dallas Fuel. And I don't think you could really rank this team off of record. Their only regular season losses, I don't remember what the other one was, but one of them was to Houston, who's looked really good. And they were all early in the season. So ever since then, they've looked immensely strong. And, I mean, they just ran over people in the knockouts, or, in the May Melee tournament, and in Hawaii, too. I mean, they were just dominant. I think the 4-2 win over Shanghai was, like, the closest game. So I think you got to kind of take the record aside for that team. And I also base this ranking off the fact I think they will perform well in this hero pool. I don't see why they wouldn't. Fearless can still play Winston. I don't really know which one of the DPS play Echo, Sparkle, or Doa, but I imagine either one of them, whoever does play it, will end up being pretty good at it. And so I think it's a team that, because of what they were playing before, will still succeed in this meta. I feel like they're kind of mostly meta-proof. And they signed Pine. I mean, that is a huge thing as well. So I think that in any meta, this team can be really good. And I think just, based off what they did in the May Melee knockouts and Hawaii was just incredible. And so that's why they're at number 1 in our power rankings. So that pretty much rounds everything out. I feel like there's probably a few hot takes. I think the Spark being in the top 9 is kind of like probably going to be a little surprising to people. Maybe you think that Toronto's too low and whatnot. I'm just kind of, we kind of just base these off of a lot of factors of like who the teams have played, how they looked in those games, not just wins and losses. So that's it for our Stage 2 Week 1 power rankings. Make sure to leave a comment. Let us know what changes you would make to our rankings. Always love seeing that. Make sure to like and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for notifications. And we will see you next week.